That 30-0 run in the Elite Eight last year was embarrassing, but ultimately, it might be the best thing to ever happen to Illini basketball. Locked on Illini, let's go.
You are Locked on Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another episode of Locked on Illini. Thank you once again for making us your first listen every single day. A simple reminder, we are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you want to help support the channel, be like Fighting Illini 23, who earlier on Monday left me this comment. I recently added you to my list of Illini podcasts I listen to, so keep it up. Thank you so much. It's comments like that that just keep me motivated. If you want to support the show, it doesn't cost you anything. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, just like my guy, Fighting Illini 23. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Now, first and foremost, thank you so much for those of you who watched Monday's episode of Locked On Illini, projected to become the most viewed and listened to episode that we've had so far in our 4.5 weeks. Obviously, the Illini Nation is super excited now. The news of Will Riley, the roster for the most part seems like it's going to be set. And we do have one scholarship available, but I don't foresee us really filling that out unless it's with a developmental player. But we know what Brad likes to do. He likes to keep that open just in case halfway through the season, a certain somebody becomes available. Brad just likes to keep that flexibility. Speaking of Brad Underwood had a media session for the first time in a couple of weeks on Monday where he got to kind of talk to media members about the last couple of months. Now, if you did watch the show that I did yesterday with Isaac Shade on Locked On College Basketball, one particular segment kind of stuck out to me was me talking about Brad and his willingness to make adjustments when he sees that it's needed, when something's not working, or even when he needs to just reach another level. He's never been shy about doing it. And today, while I was listening to his media session, he kind of said something that stuck out to me and honestly made me smile and made me very happy as an Illini fan. So I believe it was Jeremy Warner from 24/7 asked him about the new level of talent that the university is now bringing in compared to the past. And Brad referenced the UConn Elite Eight game and the 30-0 run that obviously has become a meme at this point now, and Illini fans can't go a week without being reminded of. But Brad had this to say. As we walked off the court and that last game, I said, if that's what a national championship team looks like, then we got a little bit to go. And that's just being real. That 30-0 run was not very fun, and there wasn't much to do to stop it. Now, we were a better team than that. We were not on that day, but that was a really talented team. You're probably looking at a team that has 2 top 5 or 6 picks. As I referenced on Locked On College Basketball the other day, Brad will see what other teams are doing successfully, and he will implement that into Illini basketball. And Brad, basically what he just got finished saying at the media day, he's kind of incorporated that into this year's team. He saw a bunch of high-level NBA players on UConn. And of course, it's not as easy as just snapping your fingers and, going out and getting NBA players. Obviously, Josh Whitman, the NIL game that Illinois is just fantastic at running, has a lot to do with this. But Brad Underwood is now leveling up the Illini. Just off the top of my head, we obviously have Will Riley projected as a lottery pick. I've seen Kylan Boswell in mock drafts. I've seen Kerry Booth in mock drafts. I've seen Kasparis in mock drafts. Morez Johnson has the capability of being in the NBA. That's 5 guys on next year's team that have NBA potential. Now, again, losing 30-0 in the Elite Eight is just not something anyone wants to experience. It was deflating, especially after such a successful season that we had. The Illini kept it reasonably close in that first half, almost to the point where it kept us optimistic about, hey, it could happen. And then 30-0 happened, and we kind of saw the difference between UConn and where we were at. Now, keep in mind, in my opinion, when we went up against UConn, we were still probably like the third best team in the country last year behind UConn and Purdue. We were playing very, very well. But there was a huge gulf in between where UConn was at and where we were at. Now, there's no shame in that. We saw that there's a big gulf between where UConn was at and where Purdue was at, right? Those were the two national championship contenders. Purdue obviously won the Big Ten, was the best team from beginning to end of the Big Ten season. UConn was just an all-time good basketball team. And Brad Underwood saw that and said, I need to do that. Just like he did when he got swept by Penn State and that method of offense that booty ball that they were playing. How do I do that? And he did. Implemented it last year. We had, as Brad referenced, the third most efficient offense in the country last year, and it was actually number one coming into that UConn game. Brad learns and adapts. And if anything comes from that Elite Eight loss to UConn, is that Brad is going to continue to learn and adapt. The talent level in Champaign continues to grow. Gets better every single year, and it doesn't look like it's going to stop. Now, folks in my comment section don't seem to be very happy that I've said that I don't think that this team is going to be as good as last year's team. I'm not hating on next year's roster. I think next year's roster is a lot better, but it's a lot younger. This team will take time to gel together, to grow, to become better college basketball players. But the ceiling for the university and this basketball program as a whole continues to get higher and higher. And it will continue to do so under Brad Underwood. A couple of other notes that stuck out to me was Brad talking about Ty Rogers. A media member asked about Ty, and Ty, according to Brad, is shooting 1,500 shots a day. They have a new shot machine which they call Noah, which has helped Ty tremendously. He's actually changed his technique a little bit. And I thought this was interesting. Brad Underwood said that Ty Rogers has made at least one three-pointer in every pickup game that they've played so far in the offseason. And that three-pointer is going to be important to the team moving forward, because Brad also talked about how 38% of the shots that the Illini took last year were three-pointers. And that's not enough for Brad. Brad has actually targeted 40 to 42% minimum of their shots being taken on next year's team to be three-point shots. And he's actually talked about how he built the roster exactly for that to happen. So that fun scoring, those high scoring games, they're not going anywhere. Brad understands that what's even better than a good defense is stressing out the opposing defense. He also gave a quick update on some of the newer players. Will Riley obviously is not here yet, but he should be joining the team by the end of July. I believe it was his mother who talked about he's going to be getting on court with the Illini sooner rather than later. Kasparis joined the team last week, so he's already practicing with the boys. Tomislav Ivicic, he's still working on that whole admissions process, but again, Brad did not look very stressed out when being asked about it. It looks like it's something that can be resolved any day now. Kylan Boswell apparently has already lost 20 pounds working with Fletch since he got onto campus. And again, I've talked about this on the show before. One of the reasons I want Will Riley on campus ASAP is to get in that weight room and start working with the dietitians in Champaign with Fletch, because they're going to get him not just game day ready for college basketball, but they're going to be key in order to get Will Riley ready for the NBA lottery, which is what he's obviously looking for in the following season. All in all, a very optimistic media session by Brad, and as it should be. It's funny, if you take a look back at my videos, about a month ago, I posted a video saying, did Brad Underwood lose the offseason? And obviously that was before Kasparis, and that was before Will Riley, but it just shows you how quickly things can turn in the world of college basketball. And it taught me a lesson. Never doubt Brad Underwood. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. So it's been a pretty busy week for your boy here with the Locked On Sports Network. Not only is our channel growing by leaps and bounds, thanks to all of you guys, but also I've been showing up on the national shows because Illini football and basketball is making news. Now, obviously, most of you guys watched my debut on the college basketball show yesterday, as obviously the Will Riley news dominated the sports world. But last week, I was actually also invited to the college football show when Sakari Franklin had decided to commit to the Illini. And for this segment, I'm going to play that interview because in our last and final segment today, we bring in Big Ten Ted. It's Tuesday, so we try to talk Big Ten football and find out what's going on, not just with the Illini, but also around the conference. So here is that interview I did with Locked On College Football.
Sakari Franklin chooses Illinois. Can't say I had that on my bingo card. Maybe Sonny Verma did. He's joining me here, the host of one of our newest shows here at the network, Locked On Illini. Sonny, when I look at Illinois' schedule, they've got some heavy hitters there, and this is a team that, we're going to talk about quarterback Luke Altmyer in just a moment, but does the addition of Sakari Franklin at wide receiver, who was a 1,000-yard guy at UTSA, didn't work out for various reasons at Ole Miss a year ago, should he be a reason that some of the big teams, Oregon, Michigan, Kansas even, look at Illinois and they feel just like a little bit more concerned?
I think so. Basically, the offense itself, we're now entering year 4 under Brett Bielema, and the team that's going to be put on the field this upcoming season is the typical Brett Bielema football team. Their offensive line is massive and going to be one of the better ones in the conference. The running back room is one of the most talented in the conference as well. The wide receivers is where kind of the questions were. While we have talent there, that's a position that Brett Bielema has really kind of focused on upgrading since he got here. They didn't really have a true number one. Now, you mentioned, Sakari Franklin coming to Illinois being somewhat of a surprise, but it wasn't really. When Franklin had his best seasons at UTSA, it was under offensive coordinator Barry Lunny Jr., who is now the offensive coordinator here at Illinois. So Franklin had his best years under Lunny Jr., and now that he knows he only has one more year to basically prove himself to make it to the NFL, I think he wanted to go to a place where he didn't need to learn a brand new game plan. He knew what to expect as soon as he steps foot on the football field.
And also probably a place that allows him to produce and showcase what sort of NFL talent he could be. And one of the other schools he was looking at was Washington, right, where he probably goes and is the number 2 or probably number 3 receiver. They've got a young guy in Denzel Boston to complement Jeremiah Hunter, who I think is a decent number 1, really high-end number 2 wideout up there in Seattle. But what does it say about the fact that Illinois, despite the offense coordinator connection, was able to pull him from a program that, albeit under a new administration, was just playing in the national championship game?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And again, it's all about relationships, in particular for a program like Illinois. As you said, Sakari Franklin is going to step foot on this football field immediately as the wide receiver 1. It's a talented room, but Pat Bryant, who had a nice year last year as the number 3, obviously, if you remember, Isaiah Williams and Casey Washington, our 1 and 2 last year, are now in the NFL. So it's not like we don't have a pedigree of producing wide receivers that can take you to the next level. So with Franklin now coming to Champaign, he's got the ability. He's going to get the opportunity. Again, he's going to be the number 1 guy, and he's going to have a quarterback who has a lot to prove. And he's entering his second full season as a starting quarterback with a good offensive line, a great running back room, I think Zakhari kind of recognized that Illinois is a good opportunity for him.
When you look at where this Illini offense is in terms of weapons, how does it compare to the rest of the Big Ten? I think if you're talking wide receiver rooms, Oregon's probably number one, Ohio State number two. You can flip-flop those if you would like. I would go Oregon with absolutely no bias in there whatsoever, as some people may or may not be aware of, but I'm not the only one that feels that way. But does the addition of Sakari Franklin suddenly give Illinois a top half group of weapons for Luke Altmyer?
Offensively, absolutely. I think as maybe in top third. The wide receiver room is probably the weakest of the bunch. That's probably average, if not below average, when it comes to the Big Ten Conference. But there's a lot of talent in that running back room. Our offensive line has been something that the coaches have been talking about nonstop this offseason. And when Brett Bielema is talking about having a really good offensive line, you know that's someone who recognizes what an offensive line is going to look at. You know, obviously it'll probably come down to Luke Altmyer's development, or his backup Leary, who can produce on the field at the quarterback spot, because the skill positions for the most part are ready to go behind a jacked up offensive line, which I'm liking.
Luke Altmyer comes back and is going to be the starting quarterback for Illinois, who play each of their first 3 games at home, including a September 7th matchup against Kansas. We'll get to that in just a moment, but talk about what this means for Altmyer at quarterback. Do your expectations of him change? Do you expect more out of him now that he has a guy in Sakari Franklin who has shown, granted the group of 5 level, but they play a lot of really good football down there, that he can be a number 1 wideout?
I do. I think the national media is a little more down on Luke Altmyer than the Illinois guys are. The 2 national games that we had last year were against Kansas, and I believe it was a Friday night ESPN game, and then where Luke Altmyer was running for his life because we were having severe offensive line issues early in the season. And then the second game was a noon kickoff against Penn State, where Luke Altmyer had 4 interceptions, which of course did not do him any favors when it came to national perception. But he really turned things around by the end of the year. And I know he got replaced eventually by John Paddock, but that's simply because John Paddock caught on fire. He was throwing 400 yards. There's no way you can bench a guy like that. But again, it was Luke's first full season as a quarterback last year, and he did show development. He was in the top half quarterbacks by the end of the season last year, and I think statistically he's one of the best returning quarterbacks into the Big Ten this year. So I'm pretty excited to see what he has in store next season. Illinois has a gauntlet that includes Oregon. In a 4-game stretch, they'll play at Penn State, then they'll host Purdue. That's a much more winnable game, but certainly you're familiar with the defensive coordinator that is now, or former defensive coordinator that's now the head coach in Ryan Walters there at Purdue. And then Illinois hosts Michigan, then they go at Oregon. Gosh, are they winning more than one of those games, Sonny? It lightens up in the second half of the year, but if you feel as confident in the weapons that Illinois has got here with Altmyer at quarterback, can they win 2 of those games? Because any one of them would be a monumental upset, but I've seen Illinois do it before. Yeah, maybe not any of those games outside like Purdue, as you mentioned, but I think this year the barometer is going to more so be like that Kansas game and the Nebraska game, which I think is a 3rd or 4th game on the schedule. Now, Kansas and Illinois are kind of going through similar paths in the sense where they both had coaching vacancies at the same time. It was long rumored that Lance Leipold was going to be the guy at Illinois, but ultimately Josh Whitman, the AD, decided to go with Brett Bielema, and now we see the turnaround story that Lance has had in Kansas, including the butt whooping they gave Illinois last year. So I think
that was not a pretty football game for the orange and blue.
And so you're kind of testing those programs. They've been on a similar trajectory. If we get blown out again, then all of a sudden there's going to be people looking around wondering if we ultimately hired the wrong guy. The other game, Nebraska's got a lot of positive buzz going into this season. Obviously, they've had an amazing offseason, but Nebraska always thinks they have an amazing offseason.
They haven't always had Matt Rule as their head coach, in their defense.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like a lot of people are expecting that Matt Rule's second year bump, but last year's Illinois-Nebraska game was one of the worst football games I've ever seen in my life. It was really, really bad. And both teams are expected to make jumps this upcoming season. Now, Nebraska's got a very light schedule, in particular the first 6 or 7 games. They're projected to go undefeated in that span. But if the Illinois offense is as good as I think it can be, having a freshman quarterback on Nebraska's side, I think, can give Illinois the opportunity to try to steal one of those wins early.
Yeah, with Sakari Franklin in there to help Luke Altmyer, I would watch for the Illini in those games. I don't know right now. It's too early for predictions, Sonny, so I'm not predicting any of these upsets yet. But Kansas, Nebraska, Michigan, Oregon, Penn State, just watch, wait, see. Sonny Verma, Locked On Illini. Get your daily Illinois coverage over there on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Sonny, thanks for stopping by.
Appreciate it, Spencer. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, it's Tuesday, and you know what Tuesday means? Tuesday means I bring back my friend, Big Ten Ted. Ted, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I'm excited. I'm really pumped about the topic we got going on today, so I'm excited to get to it.
You look a little refreshed, as if you were on vacation or something like that.
A vacation, can you call it a vacation when you're hiking 10-ish miles every day, adventuring, whatever you want to call it. I said it out there, and I know some people have different opinions on it, but now is a great time for college football fans to refresh. College football will be waiting for us. I know there's a lot of back and forth on Twitter and everything right now about some topics out there, but now's a great time to get out, climb a mountain, go on vacation a little bit, sit by the beach if that's kind of your thing. Go out to Big Ten country in California, in Oregon, in Washington, places like that. So it was great to refresh. Vacation number 1 of the year, going to be headed out to Washington State later. Right. So yeah, Colorado is beautiful this time of year, pretty much any time of year. So it was great.
You definitely got to follow Ted on X. I definitely saw him post videos inside Memorial Stadium. You're as big of a deal as Ted. You get to access to things like this. All right, Ted. So in the second segment, we actually kind of showed my appearance on Locked On College Football, talking about the Sakari Franklin commitment to the Illini and what it kind of meant for the football team this upcoming year. Now, again, you're the expert here when it comes to broader Big Ten and what it means conference-wise. But let's just talk about the Illini real quick. Now, obviously, we have a quarterback in Luke Altmyer, and now we have Sakari Franklin as his wide receiver 1. Luke Altmyer is going to be entering his second full season as a quarterback. And so a lot of us are going to be counting on him to make some sort of a jump this year. Hopefully the game slows down for him a little bit. And, of course, it's going to be a little bit easier now that he's got Sakari to throw to. But give me the outsider's viewpoint of the upgrade that Illinois got last week.
I love Sakari Franklin, man. You watch him on film, you look at his numbers that he was able to produce at UTSA, and it really pops off the page. And this is the type of weapon, right, for Big Ten fans that say, okay, they got rid of Isaiah Williams. They lost their wide receivers coach, George McDonald. He goes down south to Ole Miss. Okay, maybe their production isn't going to be as good on the outside. No, when you get a guy in Sakari Franklin that has a connection with Barry Lunny Jr., right? Lunny was his offensive coordinator there for a few years down in San Antonio. That connection, right, is going to form really well, you would have to think. And that's that weapon on the outside. I obviously, a lot of people are going to compare him to what Isaiah Williams was, but I think they're very different. in their style of play. I look at Sakari Franklin, and look, I'm not going to put him up there with maybe some of the best receivers in the Big Ten, with maybe the Tez Johnsons or the Emeka Bukas and guys like that. But maybe that next tier, I think Sakari Franklin can certainly fit into there, right? Because this is a guy, 2 1,000-yard seasons at UTSA, 12 touchdowns and 15 touchdowns respectively in 2 of those seasons. Of course, it didn't work out last year at Ole Miss, but this is the number one target. I think there were maybe some questions of where Pat Bryant stood as maybe a go-to number one guy. So I think that kind of has a trickle-down effect where now maybe Pat Bryant can fit more into his role. Okay, whenever all the attention maybe is on Sakari on the other side, we know that Pat Bryant can come up with some big catches. So I think it really fits this offense really well going forward. And the big question is going to be Luke Altmyer, which I'm sure we'll get to.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, he's probably not the most talented wide receiver in the country, but, and this is just facts, he's got the best stats coming into this year, at least career-wise. He's and he's a veteran presence. And I think that's just something that a quarterback like Luke Altmyer could really use. Someone he can – last year he had Casey Washington, a senior that, hey, if I'm in trouble, if I throw it up to Casey will do something with it. And he did. This year, as you kind of mentioned, Pat Bryant was elevated to the wide receiver 1 spot, and we like him, but we're still not sure. We need to see it on the field. Malik Elzy, 4-star recruit from a couple of years ago, he came with credentials, but he didn't really perform to the level that we were hoping for last year. So we have high hopes for him, but that's all it really was, hopes. And so bringing in Zakhari, I think, kind of grounds us a little bit into knowing that we have at least one player that Luke can kind of trust when he throws that ball. But speaking of the two, now let's just kind of compare. Like Luke Altmyer, Sakari Franklin, where would they rank roughly in the Big Ten when it comes to like quarterback wide receiver combinations?
Yeah, I was kind of going through this in preparation for this, and there's a lot of good combinations. Of course, when you add in some of those West Coast combinations out there, that's certainly going to help and maybe knock this combination down a few pegs. This combination maybe wasn't as high as maybe I originally thought it would be, or maybe some Illini fans maybe wouldn't be as high. I think because of Luke Altmyer, I got a little bit of a sour taste in my mind with Luke. Like you look at last year, I know offensive line maybe had something to do with this, but he was running around a lot there. He had to do a lot with his legs, right? And then, of course, what happens late in the season, gets banged up, gets replaced by John Paddock, and then he doesn't play after November. If he maybe would have put up a little bit better year and had a full year last year, I might feel a little bit confident, but I think that's kind of where I sit right now. And then I watched that spring game where this offense seemed to unleash when Donovan Leary was in there. And then Luke Altmyer was maybe in the more short to medium passing game. So there's just a lot of uncertainty, I think, in my head. But when I go and I look at maybe some of the top quarterback wide receiver tandems in the Big Ten, of course, you got to look at the University of Oregon, right? You have a Heisman Trophy contender in Dylan Gabriel, quarterback. Tez Johnson over there at wide receiver might be one of the best wide receivers in all of college football. He's going to be up there for the Biletnikoff, right? I think he's going to come in where Troy Franklin really left off in Eugene, Oregon. I know there's maybe been some people out there knocking Will Howard a little bit, right? Saying that he's not, the CJ Stroud or that type of quarterback, Justin Fields, that Ohio State is maybe used to before Kyle McCord. But, I think you got to put Howard and Emeka Egbuka or Jeremiah Smith in this group just because of what the wide receiver position is right now. And Howard, you look at last year, threw 24 touchdown passes. He's not a bad quarterback. He is an improvement over Kyle McCord, and Kyle McCord still put up some pretty decent numbers as well. Watch out for the combos at Washington. Will Rogers coming in a Jed Fish and Brendan Carroll offense. I think that's going to mix together well. Now, of course, they replace a generational wide receiver room, but I do like what they have over there at wide receiver. You look at Denzel Boston kind of coming in there as well. They got a transfer coming over from Cal, Jeremiah Hunter. That's also very good as well. And then USC, right? It's just, you got to give Lincoln Riley the benefit of the doubt, right? When you throw in Miller Moss and pick a receiver, Jacoby Lane, pick Deuce Robinson, pick Zachariah Branch, right? That is going to be Jacoby Lane is probably the best overall all-around receiver that they had. And then I dropped down a tier, we'll call it. And that's, I think, where I start to put in this Luke Altmyer and Sakari Franklin type of combination. Other guys that I have, Curtis Rourke, Elijah Surratt at Indiana. Boy, I tell you what, folks, that Indiana team, they're going to sling the football around. And I get more excited the days that go by about what the Hoosiers can have throwing the football. Drew Aller, right, with Andy Kotelnicki coming in as the offensive coordinator, Julian Fleming from Ohio State, maybe Harrison Wallace, right, is going to be in there as well. I know maybe the quarterback isn't as sexy here, but MJ Morris, and then you combine at Maryland, you combine him with Ty Felton and Caden Prather, who are really good receivers. That's maybe comparable to Illinois. I'd probably put Illinois actually in their combination maybe a notch ahead of where that sits with Maryland. And also, don't sleep on what's happening in Westwood. Don't sleep on UCLA. They have a sneaky, really good wide receiver room, right? Ethan Garbers is a good quarterback. And then you have some good talent out there with J. Michael Sturdivant and Rico Flores transferring from Notre Dame. People are really excited about as well. Tyler Van Dyke, Will Pauling at Wisconsin, you could maybe throw in there as well. But in that second group of those guys that I just mentioned, I'd probably put the Luke Altmyer and Sakari Franklin somewhere in the middle of that. So I would say that in terms of a quarterback and receiver combination, Illinois is probably somewhere within the top 4 to 6 to 7, right? They are certainly in the top half of the Big Ten. I'd feel more confidently to maybe put them towards maybe the bottom of that tier 1 if I had a little bit more to believe in with Luke Altmyer.
I think that's fair. I think Illinois fans are a little higher on Luke Altmyer than more the national folks like you are, but your concerns of him are absolutely validated, and that Luke has a lot of things to prove to folks, outside the Illinois circle. I mean, in the Illinois circle too. Don't get me wrong, but I think you're absolutely right. Ted, you're actually doing a really fun series right now. Before we go, explain to the folks what you're doing now with football season coming up.
I am doing maybe what no mere mortal should attempt to do, and that's recording 18 team previews for every single Big Ten team right now. Maybe the content being publicly seen is not as much here these next 2 or 3 weeks, but having guests on to record team previews for all 18 teams. So once we hit July 19th, which is a significant date because that is the release of the college football video game, July 19th is going to be the first of my previews for Big Ten teams this year. The defending champions, National and Big Ten. Michigan will kick things off. I've got people from the On3 Network, from the Rivals Network, 24/7 Network, and all kinds of podcasts and shows and personalities. Locked On Network, much like yourself in there. So it's been a lot of fun. These are deep dives, analytical, in-depth. We're looking at position group by position group by position group. 25 to 30-minute previews. I kind of add it all up together. There might be a super cut of all of them, kind of a marathon one day. It's looking like it's going to be about 7.5 to 8 hours of previews at one point. So, this is an undertaking, so to speak, that even Mark Calloway would be jealous of. But it's crazy. It is crazy, but I'm so excited. I am sensing the anticipation from a lot of these people and a lot of these fans. So I can't wait for everybody to see it.
I can't wait to spend my summer with one TV playing that NCAA football game and the other TV listening to those Big Ten previews in the background. Ted, thank you so much for joining us today. Once again, before on your way out, let the folks know where they can find you.
Yeah, at Big Ten Ted over there on Twitter, on Podcast, Apple, and Spotify. You can find the shows there. That's where you'll also find those team previews. And then on YouTube, Big Ten Ted over there on YouTube, all Big Ten all year long.
Thank you, Ted. That just about wraps it up for another episode of Locked On Illini. On your way out, please hit that like button, subscribe button. If you're listening to this on audio, I appreciate you guys. The show is doing crazy numbers on the podcast side, and the Locked On Network itself has been very, very impressed by the Illini showing. Just do me a favor, give me 5 stars. Let me know what you want me to talk about. I'm here for you. Again, it's the off season. Things are slow now. So now I'm at the point where if there's a particular topic you guys want to see, let me know in the comments. Let me know. Leave that 5-star review. And in the review, leave a question. I'll try to answer it on here. Thank you all for joining me. And I will see you on tomorrow's episode, Locked On Illini. ILL. Love you guys.